welcome to Elements of Ayurveda, Empowering Wisdom of Life. I'm your host, Colette, and in this podcast, I hope to empower you to take charge of your own health by sharing the holistic teachings of Ayurveda, the ancient healing tradition from India. We will also discuss topics like health and wellness, nutrition, yoga, fitness, meditation, breath work, and much more, as well as interviewing lots of inspiring people along the way. My humble wish is to help you to connect to your true nature, to Mother Nature, and to each other. If you like the content, be sure to subscribe to the show, and the new episodes will automatically download for you to enjoy. If you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend you listen to the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. I've also set up a Facebook group for us to connect and to support each other, and I'd love for you to join me over at Elements of Ayurveda podcast group. And now, here's the show. Hello, and welcome to Elements of Ayurveda. It's Colette, and you have a solo podcast with me today because I want to talk to you today about the importance of speaking your truth. I mentioned this a lot in previous episodes, particularly when I'm talking about discovering your true self or uncovering your true nature. And of course, yoga and Ayurveda assist us on this journey of self-realization. But in this episode, I want to delve deeper into this. And the reason this is coming up for discussion for me now is many reasons, but in particular, I've had two conversations with dear friends this week. One was in Ireland and one was in Canada. And they both told me in separate conversations that they didn't feel comfortable talking to people about their truth. They didn't feel comfortable really letting go and just speaking about their spiritual journey or their spiritual experiences or just feeling open with people, and they felt really isolated. And they told me that I was one of the few people they shared their truth with. And of course, I'm truly honored that they feel comfortable enough with me to be vulnerable and open, and I really cherish that. However, it also made me feel really sad that they didn't feel they could express their truth. And I know I used to feel like this, and I feel it's probably the same for many of us and for many of you out there. Now, there's a big awakening happening right now in our world. Men, and in particular women, are waking up at this time. What does it mean to wake up? Well, people are realizing that they don't have to conform or to fit in or to walk the path that has been laid out for them by society. For those of us who are waking up, we're questioning how we're living our lives. We're looking for deeper meaning to our lives. We're looking at the bigger picture and the way we're treating Mother Nature and what sort of world we are leaving to the next generation. We all want to feel that we have some purpose in this world. We want to feel heard. We want our lives to mean something. And we're also conscious of how we're connected to the greater consciousness. The fact that we're all one, and how we live our lives affects our energy, affects the energy of those around us and the energy of the planet. For those of us who are waking up, we understand that we are a part of nature, and we have to respect and live in tune with nature in order to be a positive and a contributing part of this greater ecosystem, rather than just taking what resources we need without any consideration of the cost. We need this shift in our world right now. We need people who are feeling that calling to speak their truth, to kindle their passion and to share it with the world. And each of us has something to share with the world. And if you're listening to this podcast, I believe you're either on the journey of uncovering your true self already, or you're curious. And being curious is an amazing place to start. However, I must warn you that once you open that box of curiosity, there's no going back. But don't worry, it does take courage, but don't be afraid. It's an amazing journey. And to wake up and to see the bigger picture of things and the possibilities is an exciting way to lead your life. So where do we start? When we feel that restlessness inside, well, I'm going to share with you my experience on my journey of awakening. And perhaps this may help you a little. Before I start telling you my story, I must say that I was hesitant. And, I've been getting a lot of intuition this week about doing an episode on speaking your truth. Not only from the 2 conversations I had, but I've also seen posts on social media, quotes, and I'll share one with you in a little while. And then I was listening to another podcast where they were talking about hiding your true self, and I had nothing recorded for this week, which is really unusual. Usually I have shows recorded in advance. So even though I was getting all this intuition and all these signs about doing this show, my negative ego was coming in and saying things like, well, who do you think you are giving advice on this? And don't you think it's a little self-centered to talk about your story? But this morning I said, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I have to practice what I preach, be courageous, speak my truth, and here you go. So I'm sharing what my journey has been like, and hopefully in sharing that, it maybe will open up something for you. So I'm going to start by going back to my childhood. And the reason I'm going back there is because this is where we really get glimpses of our true nature. This is a time when we are innocent, where we didn't have to worry about fitting in or conforming to society, or we weren't worried about what people would think or say. So when I was young, when I think back, I think I was definitely an independent thinker, and I challenged a lot of things growing up. I was feisty, and I was definitely called cheeky. And I was probably considered challenging because I would question things. And things I would question, well, things like when my mother would say, wait till your father gets home to discipline me if I was being cheeky. And I would think, I would say to her, oh, why do we have to wait for dad to get home? Just challenging that. Like, why do we have to wait for the man to get home? Can't you discipline me? So that never went down very well. But that's just a sample of how I questioned things. I also questioned why my brothers didn't have to do any housework, why they could just push back from the table and go chill while the girls had to do the dishes. I questioned that a lot. And my brothers weren't happy about me questioning it. I also questioned hierarchy a lot. I grew up at a time in Ireland where the church and the school teachers had a lot of control. And they took advantage of that power. And that I questioned a lot. I'm not going to go into detail on that, but that definitely, I remember growing up and just questioning that and wondering why people would bow down to these seemingly pillars of society when I know that there wasn't some good things going on there. So that I questioned as well. And I remember on a school tour in Europe when I was about 15, we were given, horse meat burgers to eat, and that was normal. I think we were in Germany at the time. And I was questioning why we were eating animals. And then as a result of that, I became vegetarian as 15. And I was hippie in college, so I was kind of going against the norm there. I'm telling you all this to paint the picture of how I was when I was younger. I was cheeky. Or I was called cheeky. I was feisty. I was a kid who questioned a lot of things from a young age. However, somewhere along the way, that independent thinker, that cheeky spirit was dampened. And I moved to the US at 20 and settled into a corporate job, with the health insurance and benefits. As an immigrant, that was really important to kind of get a little bit of security. And I got into the hamster wheel of corporate America and had the mentality that my job was just there to pay the bills. And I really didn't care what I did, which is crazy thought process to me now. But at the time it was like, okay, this is how life is. I'm just going to do this job and, enjoy my time at the weekends, and the job is whatever. And I eventually, thankfully, left that job after about a decade to follow my passion of health and fitness. However, my awakening or reawakening didn't come until years later when I lived in France, and it was just before my 40th birthday, so it could have been a midlife crisis too. But I had a yoga and fitness studio in Nice, France, which I loved. And even though I was teaching yoga, I had personal training clients and I was teaching fitness, but in the yoga, I hadn't really delved deep into the spiritual side of things. And personally, I was focused on the physical aspect as it was like a balance for all the competitive sports I was doing at the time. And even when I was teaching yoga classes, I was focused more on the physical asana rather than going into the spiritual side of yoga. But then I started to feel restless. And I wasn't feeling satisfied and I wanted something more, but I didn't know what. I had no idea. I know I wanted to make more impact into my own health and the health and well-being of my clients. At this stage, I thought I was doing everything healthy and, I was doing all the sports and I thought I was eating healthy, but I wasn't feeling good. So I knew something was off. And I was teaching my clients yoga and fitness, but I felt like I was only scratching the surface there. So I was getting restless. And like I said, I didn't know for what. And then in 2013, I was training one of my personal training clients, and she mentioned she was going to see a woman who does astrological readings. And I had never had a reading done before, but I really felt a calling to do it when she mentioned it. So I did. Now, before I start into this information about this reading, I'm not telling you or encouraging you to go get an astrological reading. I want to tell you this information because I feel this is how the universe communicated with me about my future and helped me to change my path or help me to awaken. Okay, so I'm not saying go out and get a astrological reading. Of course, if it resonates with you, go do it. But this is how I felt my life path or my future was communicated to me. So it was on October 31st, 2013. So 5 years ago this week. And the woman doing the astrological reading started to read my transits, what would be happening in the planet over the next couple of years and how it would affect me. She told me that I was about to go on a spiritual journey. I was going to be reading a lot of spiritual books and big travels for spiritual purposes. There was going to be a desire to meditate and that my spiritual life will become very important. Now, remember, I just told you I did yoga, but I wasn't really into the spiritual side. And she also said that I would be more experimental with my food and I would later focus on the body from an alternative perspective. She said that I would do a 180-degree flip on how I was seeing things and all illusions would fade away. I would become more experimental and try new things using my body as an experiment and telling people what I discovered. She also told me that my freedom was very important to me. Now that's very true, and I'll come back to this in a little while. But when I got that reading, 5 years on now, it makes total sense. It's exactly what has happened. But at the time, I found the information really interesting, but I didn't see how it could fit into my life at that stage. I had a business to run. I didn't really feel any draw towards spirituality. I was intrigued by the information, like I said, but I put the info aside and I went back to my life. So that was October 2013. And I went back to life as normal, running my business. But then fast forward to January 2014, and my business lease was coming up for renewal, and the apartment I was living in was about to be sold. So there was a lot of change happening. And after some reflection, I decided not to renew my business lease. And with that decision made, it opened up this whole realm of possibilities. I was really excited. I didn't realize how much that business weighed me down. And all of a sudden, with closing that door, I could do whatever I wanted. Now, remember, I love my freedom. And so I started looking at the bigger picture of my life and thought, well, if I don't have to stay here to run a business, I'm free to do whatever I want. So as a freedom-loving person, that was the best thing in the world to me. So I got this desire then after, making the decision to close the business. I got the desire to sell everything, get rid of all my possessions and just to go traveling. I started then to think back to my astrological reading. And that gave me the confidence to make such a big move. So in March 2014, I took off with my backpack on my back for year travel. I actually have a photo. I'll put it up in the podcast Facebook group so you can see. I had my backpack on my back and I was going off for a year of travel. And I had no plans. I was just going to follow my intuition. So my first aha moment came when I was sitting in my friend's car in France to go to the airport to start this year of travel. And, you know, I'm making sure I have my passport and everything. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I have no keys. And that was huge for me because I always had so many keys. I had my apartment keys, the studio keys, the scooter keys. I always seemed to have so many keys that I was always checking if I had them on me and making sure I didn't lose them. And that feeling that I had no keys was a real sense of freedom for me. That is when it really hit me that, wow, I am free. So like I said, I didn't make any plans for the year. You know, I was going to follow my intuition, but I did start the journey by going to a yoga retreat because I knew that if I went from, you know, the life I was living in France where I was very busy and the last few weeks were quite stressful as I was selling things and I was, you know, getting rid of everything and I was closing a business. And then if I went from that to just sitting on a beach, that would be way too much of a shock to the system. So I did book a 2-week yoga retreat in Thailand, and that would be a good transition because it would, you know, provide a little bit of structure, a little bit of community and some rejuvenation. And then from there, after that, I traveled solo through Thailand, Laos and Cambodia and ended up in Bali. And I cover a lot about my trip in Bali in my earlier episode, which is number 5, Healing in Bali. But just in summary here, you know, I was in Bali at this stage and I felt like I had done a big cleanse of all these possessions in my life. And I really wanted to do a big internal cleanse and not just like a juice fast, but really go deep. So someone recommended to go see Dr. Sujata, who lived behind the monkey forest in Ubud, Bali. And I went to see her and she recommended a 3-week panchakarma, which is the Ayurvedic cleanse, and you stay in the clinic and they give you treatments, oil treatments every day, and they give you food specifically for you and herbal medications and whatever you need. But it's just a lovely time out to just really heal your body. So I stayed there in the clinic and I started to read some books on Ayurveda. And when I was there, this was, I think, the biggest aha moments of my life. The Ayurveda resonated with me so deeply. Not only what I was studying and what I was reading about and what Dr. Sujata told me in my consultation about why I was so burnt out from all my exercising and why I wasn't feeling healthy, even though I thought I was eating the right foods, because I was eating the wrong foods basically for my body type. And then I was experiencing, of course, all the healing with the Ayurvedic cleanse. I was feeling it in my body. And I was just getting all these light bulb moments and I was sold. This was the missing puzzle piece that I was searching for, both personally and professionally. And so I went on to work at the clinic with Dr. Sujata for a year, teaching yoga, studying Ayurveda and helping in the clinic. And then, and you can hear more about all that and my interview with Dr. Sujata in episode number 5. But then once I left the clinic after a year, I went on to further my studies in Ayurveda. And now here I am now sharing what I have learned on my continuing journey of uncovering my true nature, my truth, after years of hiding it away. And, you know, really, I'm not any different from you. We all have a truth within us that needs to be expressed in the world. And I'm going to share with you now one of the quotes I came across this week, which was like, wow, as I was thinking about doing this episode and all these signs kept coming up. This was one that I came across on social media, and it's from Della Hicks Wilson. And it says, "Darling, you feel heavy because you are too full of truth. Open your mouth more. Let the truth exist somewhere other than inside your body." Let me repeat that because it's just amazing. Darling, you feel heavy because you are too full of truth. Open your mouth more. Let the truth exist somewhere other than inside your body. So again, that was from Della Hicks Wilson. And this is so true. If we're not living our truth or expressing our true nature, then we have this feeling of heaviness, this feeling that something is just not right. We have a feeling that we want more. We're feeling unfulfilled, just not content. And this journey to self-realization is really about uncovering your truth and expressing that truth of you in the world so that it doesn't literally ferment inside of you and cause all these feelings of heaviness. And I think that if we bottle it up inside, it's going to come out somewhere. And of course, the universe sometimes comes in and gives us many lessons to wake us up. And it may be a sickness. It may be a loss of a job, a loss of money or a relationship. And for me, there was many lessons along the way, but the last one was really a relationship that I knew wasn't good for me. But I had to experience it. I had to go through it. I understand why I had to experience it, because it was really there to crack me open so that I got to the point and said, like, that's it. You know, in this relationship, I knew I wasn't happy. I wasn't free to speak my mind, my truth, and I was really suppressing my true self. It took me a long time to get this message. After many repeating patterns, I finally woke up. And so that's when I made the promise to myself that I wasn't going to censor myself anymore and that I was going to be free to be me without any apologies. And that was very important to me, to be free. So that's how, you know, I got my messages, and the universe gives us nudges along the way, and it may start with little nudges, but sometimes they get stronger or bigger. And again, it's just to wake us up, to really shake us to our core. And always think that, well, there's a lesson in there somewhere. And the tendency at the time is to think, like, why is this happening to me? I don't understand. But really, there's always a message, you know, and if you can remember in those times when it's really hard and when it may seem really dark, is what is this lesson? You know, without going into the pity party of poor me, remember that the greatest discoveries or the greatest aha moments come out of times of desperation. And like I said, even though it doesn't feel like it at the time, there is some lessons. And at the other side of this hard time, that there is something good's going to come out of it. And it's happening for a reason, for the highest good of yourself, just to really crack you open and make that truth come out. So what is your truth? Are you a cook healing people with your food? Are you a conscious entrepreneur who's doing business differently? For example, you know, like a certified B Corp, and B Corps are amazing companies. These are where the company considers the people, the profit, and the planet when making business decisions. Or, you know, are you doing something creative where you heal people with your writing, your art, your music? And in fact, I'm going to share a quick story here too, because I talked with another friend this week who's quite ill and has recently just lost a family member. So there was a lot of pain right now. However, she sent me a video yesterday from Halloween, and it was a video of another friend of ours who had visited her and her family on Halloween. You know, they were all dressed up, and they're a family of musicians, amazing musicians. It was her husband, and her two young kids. And they went to my friend's house, my friend who's ill and had just lost a family member. And they played this gig for them in the house. And the video was amazing. They were singing and they were all dressed up. And my friend who's ill has just said to me, you know, she said the power of that music, the healing power of that music, and how she felt that it really lifted her spirits, and it lifted the spirits of everybody in that house that evening. And even into the following days, she could still feel that energy from the music really lifting her spirits as she's going through such a challenging time. And that's just one example of how our friend and her family of amazing musicians, brought healing through their music. They were just doing their passion. They were sharing their passion. And just by sharing their passion, they brought great comfort and an uplifting energy to those people who were suffering. And they lifted the spirits of everyone in the house that night. I just thought that was a really beautiful story. And again, I just wanted to share that with you because it shows the power of when people are in their passion, how they can have a healing for others around them. And, your truth, it may not be creative. It may be the quality in your personality. Like you're a very caring person. Maybe you're compassionate. Maybe you're a great listener. You get the idea that it could be anything, but whatever it is, it's yours. It's your truth. And we each have something to offer the world. And it's important not only for you to reveal your truth, but also for the world to experience your truth. And I truly believe that we have no idea the impact we can have. And I know this because I've experienced it through my own podcast here. I started this podcast to share the wisdom of Ayurveda, and I thought it was so profound I wanted to get it out there. I'm just getting lovely messages of how people are appreciating the information and how it's helping them in their lives. And actually, at the end of the podcast, stay true to the end, I'll share one I got from this week from Anne in Sydney. She gave me permission to share her voicemail, so I'll share that with you. But this is just to say that when you're in your truth, you can really help others. So I hope that message is getting out to you loud and clear. And I'm not saying it's all, rainbows and butterflies, because it can be a challenging journey at times. You can feel alone, feeling different, and you're not quite fitting into the box that society has tailored for you. And this is what I was chatting to my friends about this week, the one in Ireland and the one in Canada, when they said that they felt alone. And change can be unsettling, and it takes courage to take the steps towards change. And this change can not only be unsettling for you, but it can also really unsettle those around you, as they may not like change and they may be just feeling a little insecure and they don't know quite what's happening. And this is where it's important to speak and to communicate and to share what's happening with those around you. And that's one of the big things I would say, is to really communicate with those around you and to be a little bit vulnerable. And when we start to be vulnerable with those we're close to, it really allows them the freedom to open up and to be vulnerable too. And I've definitely felt that in my own life, going back to when I was going through that kind of awakening. I would say just as I was starting to leave France, I opened up a lot more to people close to me. But when I really started opening up and letting the cracks show, as it were, I really felt that other people around me started opening up and our friendships became a lot deeper. So I really encourage you, as you're going through change, to open up to those closest around you. And if you feel like you really can't open up to those around you, well, I would say to find a group where you can fit in, like-minded people. Maybe you will find something like a yoga group or a meditation group, or maybe it's a meetup, especially for inspirational or spiritual purposes. Or perhaps you have a book club that you go to, and maybe you could suggest that you read an inspirational or spiritual book and see where the conversations go. Or maybe it's a hobby that you have, but find, like-minded people. If you feel that you can't open up to those close to you, if you think they're just not going to understand, they're going to think I'm a weirdo, they're going to think I'm a little woo-woo or airy-fairy or whatever word they put on it, then find other people in your community, whether it be in your immediate community or online, where you can connect with people. And some other thoughts about how you could start on this journey to opening up your truth. Well, understanding your mind-body type is really key, as we do in Ayurveda, understanding your birth constitution. And that's the first step in Ayurveda, is the self-study. We talk about understanding your unique mind-body type, because you really can't make any decisions without understanding yourself first. And when I do an online consultation with people, I often ask them to think back to when they were a child and what they liked to do and how they were when they were a child. And oftentimes people get excited when they think back to their childhood passions and what, they liked to do back then. And this is the time when we didn't have to fit in, right? When we didn't have to conform. We could really be our true selves. And oftentimes when we look back to the early stages of our lives, this often holds the key to our truth. So I suggest to you to start looking back at that, maybe spend some time thinking about it or journaling about it if that resonates with you. But think back as to what would light you up when you were younger. Another way to kind of get in touch with your truth is to meditate daily. It's really important to bring some quietness, to allow some inspiration, to allow the intuition, the creativity to enter, because we're so jam-packed these days. And our lives are so hectic, we don't get time to think. So having some time, I always recommend at least 5 minutes every morning to meditate. And another way you could do this, another way you could shut off that cognitive mind, that thinking mind, the focused mind, is to do some automatic writing or journaling like I suggested, or maybe you get an adult coloring book. They have many of those out there now. Or maybe it's when you're cooking, whatever activity you do that you can just get lost in it. So what is it for you that really shuts off your cognitive mind? And when you're really into something, and like I said, for some people, it could be creativity, it could be baking, it could be a hobby you have, but that allows that creativity to come in, that allows those moments of inspiration, that intuition to come in. Another thing that's important to really uncovering your truth, of course, is keeping your body cleansed, because when we have toxins, that's what causes that heaviness, the brain fog, the lethargy, that feeling of inertia, that feeling of blahness. So always recommend cleanses. I talk about that a lot on the podcast. I don't need to go into detail on that. But cleansing your body and cleansing your life, purging stuff, purging material stuff from your life. Where in your home do you have a lot of clutter that's holding stagnant energy? Can you do a clean out, get rid of some stuff, move that energy? That can really help to, getting rid of stuff from the past. Maybe that has old memories tied to it that doesn't serve you anymore. And as you're going through that purging process, that can be really healing. And maybe looking around, if you have relationships that are draining you, start to be conscious of that, how you're feeling when you're in people's energy, having awareness around that and see if that relationship is serving you or if it's draining you. Also, listen to inspiring podcasts or reading inspiring books. That's a great way to start thinking about your true nature, to start getting some inspiration, or spending time in nature, making sure that you're getting some time in nature, I would say daily, whether it's before your day begins, maybe during your lunchtime, having your lunch outdoors, or at the end of the day, just to clear your mind, to connect with nature. It's so healing. And again, that's when we're getting that space. We're processing our thoughts, but maybe we can switch off for a little while and start getting that inspiration coming in as well. And, Ayurveda suggests studying a subject that inspires you. And maybe it's a topic that you loved when you were younger, but you brushed it aside as life got busy. Is there something that you used to love to think about or to study? And start investing some time in that. Start maybe listening to podcasts on that subject or reading a book on that subject. Where can you invest some time into that subject? And I think that's really important, to study something that you're passionate about. Even if life is really hectic and you don't have much time, maybe you have time to listen to an audiobook or a podcast while you're commuting or while you're doing housework or while you're exercising. most of all, like I said earlier, be vulnerable with those close to you. And when we open up, people will see us. They'll connect with us. There's a feeling of shared empathy, of shared experience. So I really encourage you to open up. Find either those people close to you or find a group of like-minded people. I made suggestions earlier that you can open up to. We all want to be seen. And if we're hiding our truth, we will always feel this deep sense of sadness, I believe. So what I say to you today is to let your freak flag fly. Reveal your true self. Yes, I said it. Let your freak flag fly. No, and I looked this up in the Urban Dictionary, and it said that as a freak, you have something interesting. You have some interesting qualities that single you out. And letting your freak flag fly is the moment when a person with unconventional manners or mode of life feels comfortable enough to be himself or herself in front of others. And I was definitely called a freak in the past, now that I think of it. I know I was definitely called a freak. So it's time to let your freak flag fly and to celebrate you in all your splendor and live the life you want to live. Now, if you're interested in some support on this journey, I would be honored to support you. I'll put a link here in the show notes to my free discovery call that I offer. It's a free 20-minute online discovery call, and I can give you tips and guidance on how that you can start on this journey, or if you're have other questions on your journey, I'm more than happy to answer it. And I'll also put a link to, my in-depth consultations if you want to go deeper, or into my cleanses as well. And my website is elementshealingandwellbeing.com, but you can also find all the link in the show notes. And please join us over on the podcast group, the Elements of Ayurveda podcast group, where you can share with us your stories of how you let your freak flag fly. And, when was a time that you spoke your truth and that you really felt seen? I'd love to hear your stories there. Maybe you'll be the courageous one. People are a little shy. Maybe you'll be the courageous one to go ahead and share your stories there. And just to support each other on this journey. We're on this amazing, fantastic journey to uncover our true selves and to really shine in the world. And it is something to be really excited about. And we're all on this journey together, and to support each other and to help each other and to help rise each other up. So please share your stories over there. Now, I'm going to leave you with a message from Anne, and who's in Australia, and she sent me this message on SpeakPipe, which is an app I have on my website. If you scroll down to the footer of every page of my website, you'll see send Colette a voice message, and you can leave a message there for me, and I maybe will share it on the podcast too. So here's the message from Anne, and it's a message about how the podcast has really helped her. And these sorts of messages just really are so special to receive, and really let me know that, okay, I'm on the journey. I'm on the right path. I'm helping people. I'm putting information out there that is helping some people. And it just adds fuel to my fire. So, Anne, thank you so, so much for taking the time to leave this message. And if any of you want to leave messages, I would love to hear from you. Here's the message from Anne.
Hello, Colette. My name is Anne. I'm from Sydney. I wanted to leave you a message to say thank you very, very much for your podcast. I have just been learning so much, and I'm in my Vata stage of life. And this is about the third time I've started with Ayurveda. Probably around 30 years ago, I went to see a practitioner. And then about 15 years ago, I went to see a practitioner. And I'm so grateful for your podcast, because it's the first time that I understand what I'm going through and why. And you had a couple of fantastic podcasts which really kind of helped me, was Aging Gracefully, and also to know Ayurvedic and the different rhythms. That really taught me why I'm waking up at certain times through the night, and why this Vata time and what to do, and it really helped me. So I wanted to say thank you. I hope one day to have a session with you, or maybe do a course with you, but I'm just slowly enjoying everything. So I just wanted to say thank you, because you've taught me so much, and I'm really starting to get connected again. So thank you. All right. I hope, I wish you well, and thank you.
Oh, that message just really touched me. So thank you so much, Anne, for taking the time to share that message. And like I said, it really helps boost me in continuing on this podcast and sharing the information when I know it's helping people out there. If you want to send me a message, check out that SpeakPipe widget. It's on the footer at the end of each website page, and you just literally click on the record button and you can speak. It's always lovely to hear your voices, and then it will send me the file. And if you want me to share it, I can share it on the podcast, or it can just be private. You can also just send me an email, but I'd love to hear from you, because I'm putting these episodes out there and I'm wondering how they're being received. So connect with me privately or in the podcast Facebook group. You'll find the link here in the show notes, Elements of Ayurveda podcast Facebook group. Until next time, take good care of yourself and be well, and speak your truth.